Hey, everybody, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. We are in a month that we've dedicated to this theme of safe and secure skies, and it is sponsored by Airspace Link, so we're appreciative of them. We also are in the midst, in fact, I think it's episode 2 of 4 of our TruWeather Partner Series this year. We're doing one a quarter. And today we have with us Tom Frooninckx from TruWeather Solutions, as well as their partner Skyway. Clifford Cruz is the CEO of that company. And we're going to learn all about how together they're ensuring safe and secure skies in the world of advanced air mobility and urban air mobility and how that all works. So awesome to have you both on the show today.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to do first is do just quick intros, gentlemen. Why don't we go with Tom first and just tell us a little bit about, not about TruWeather, we're going to ask about that next. Tell us about yourself.
All right. Well, hello, Dawn. Hello to everyone. Thanks for having me. If you don't mind, I might spend a little more than just a few minutes talking about myself because I think it will be relevant to what we talk about later. But I started my professional career as an Air Force officer. In my specialty, as you might expect, was meteorology. And I ended up spending 28 years in the Air Force, primarily providing aviation weather information and services to literally just a wide variety of operators and organizations around the world. Now, if any of our listeners think that it would be boring to be an Air Force meteorologist, I'd like to share a couple thoughts. During those 28 years, I got to support fighter jets and making sure that the fighters were successful in finding their targets and then dropping their weapons on the target. I got to support cargo aircraft, delivering tons and tons, millions of tons of cargo around the world. I was involved with reconnaissance aircraft, low altitude helicopters. I found myself in air operations centers, which is really something that we're going to talk about today, I would suspect, all in very relevant combinations between the weather and the operator. And then I also got to be an airborne command post aircrew member. That is, I actually flew on an aircraft providing weather information to swarms of aircraft flying over the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. I logged about 700 hours doing that. And
Wow.
Dawn, if that wasn't enough, I got to provide highly sensitive weather services to the people who operate our spy satellites. And when I say our spy satellites, I'm referring to the United States spy satellites, as well as even the CIA. And I throw those names around, not to be a name thrower, but to actually explain that all of those organizations, whether it's a helicopter pilot or the CIA, they're doing operations that are affected by weather. And so my part in that was to provide not only the weather information, but helping them make smart decisions. One of the last roles that I played in the Air Force was as the director of an organization called the First Weather Group. It has responsibilities for providing all of the weather services for about 325 Air Force and Army installations throughout the United States, including the Air National Guard and Army Guard units. So my point here is I've seen a lot of weather. I've seen how weather can affect the success of lots of different types of activities. And I've seen how weather information, if it's smartly used, can increase the success of those operations. Now, after the Air Force, because life does exist after the Air Force, I went to Purdue University in Indiana. I was the managing director of the College of Technology. I was there for 9 years, and for 2 of those years, I served as the head of the School of Aviation and Transportation Technology. That school offered a couple of majors that are near and dear to our hearts today. One was the Professional Flight Program, and the other is the Unmanned Aerial Systems Program. So I had an opportunity to lead those programs or help lead them. And then I also taught, of course, I couldn't not teach advanced aviation meteorology. My last professional hurrah is joining TruWeather, which I did a year ago. And so far in the last 1 year, it's been rather exciting. So sorry, that was a little bit longer than just sharing a bit about myself.
No, no, that's actually great context. And Tom, your position with TruWeather, can you tell everybody what your current position is?
Yeah, so I think I was advertised as the executive vice president, but just recently I was named the chief operating officer. So Don Birchoff, who we'll talk about here in a moment, our CEO, was kind enough and perhaps not smart enough to to appoint me in that role. But I'm thrilled to have the role, and I look forward to the future.
Well, congratulations on the promotion, if you will. Sorry we didn't pivot our marketing quick enough for that, but that's awesome. And so, if you guys are wowed by Tom, wait till you hear also about Cliff, because Cliff, when you were on this show, what, a year ago? I think it was in May.
Yeah,
It might have been exactly a
it's
year
been a
ago.
minute. Yeah.
I was just like, holy shnikes, this guy. Like, so for those that don't know you, Cliff, could you tell us a little bit about your personal background as well?
Yeah, my journey's been quite an adventure. I honestly started out in life, had no idea how it was going to go, but it ended up being pretty exciting anyway. But I guess a serial entrepreneur is what I ended up being, and my love for computers kind of really took me off in a direction that was pretty around crowds that were innovating a lot of technologies that were really on the cutting edge, right? Emerging market type stuff. And I ended up being around various inventors and became a serial inventor myself over time. And and so I've been a part of various technologies that have kind of really brought fruit to a lot of really cool industries. Some of the notable ones, well, my first one anyway, was in the entertainment business. I was part of the team that invented some of the 3D camera equipment. So a lot
Wow.
of the movies you see, are part of a lot of the work that we did during that time. I worked on various cybersecurity, aerospace defense projects, doing encryption protocols for the DoD, of which now are being used all across like different weapon systems. And then and then I got into I did a prototype for aircraft communication. I invented the surface ground to air internet service nodes. Like it was like a multi-node system, and that was being used. And then my last startup was a cybersecurity firm focused on radio. Um, it's like radio security. I invented a scanning device that would scan all this stuff like in your pockets and stuff. And at that and that ended up being sold to a lot of airports and a lot of different like entities and stuff. So, building technology has kind of been my forte in enterprise systems and stuff. And my family came from an aviator background, and so being around like a lot of cargo airplanes, like it's a kind of come full circle for me in a way. And so with Skyway, everything we're doing, my knowledge in enterprise software and enterprise business is now meeting aviation. So it's kind of a really cool space to be in. And obviously working with TruWeather has been quite an adventure on its own for me knowledge wise. As a tech guy, you're always inside. You never really care about the weather. Unless it's a tornado ready to wipe out your data center.
There you
But
go.
other than that, right, you really never really think about it. So, we've been really blessed with TruWeather to kind of guide us through that, and all the technology they provided us has been really, really helpful.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Don Berghoff, the CEO of TruWeather, and how he's been proselytizing weather. That's what I tell everybody, like far and wide for several years now. I think, did you guys just have a 10-year anniversary? I know I remember doing a video for Don's seventh, but I feel like 10 is like creeping in my mind. Is that right, Tom?
Well, see, this is the thing about Don. It depends on exactly how you ask him the question. It's about 8, 9. He might tell you it's 10 because he was thinking about it for 12
There
months.
you go.
You
One
know,
day, like in the bathroom, he had a thought, and therefore it's a decade. Oh, I know, I get it. But you know what I want to do? I want to go back to Cliff because, first of all, everybody out there, If you're not totally blown away by these two gentlemen and their backgrounds, like please check your pulse because I'm not sure if you're breathing. But just like amazing backgrounds. And so Cliff, like everything you just said, this cybersecurity background, kind of generalized technology, working with airports, all of these things, I imagine, kind of converged in your mind as you were hearing about drones and advanced air mobility and urban air mobility and electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. So tell us like what inspired, first of all, tell us about Skyway and what you guys are doing, number one. And then number two, tell us like what inspired you to create this company, being the serial entrepreneur that you are.
Yeah, it was kind of like a moment for me. It was in 2012, honestly, like 2011. There was a drone expo in Los Angeles, and it was the first drone expo ever in LA. UCLA was there along with DJI, and I want to say maybe like two other companies. Honestly, there was like, there weren't even booths. They were just tables with tablecloths
Yeah.
and some sort of cage thing. But anyway, I saw drones for the first time and it was just blew my mind. And ever since then, I always thought that that was going to be the future. And, lo and behold, years go by, the last company I had, had a good exit, and I'm sitting there kind of thinking about what I'm doing, next in my life. And I remember that whole drone thing. And so we started an incubator, and then, put Skyway in, and then we realized, oh, wow, there's a huge opportunity. There's all these companies, MIT's all involved in it, NASA, and so we kind of really started talking about calling up everybody and saying, well, what's the business case and how does this work and da 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 da. And then what we did is we found where our specialties were, and what we could do and contribute to this whole thing. Originally, we started off doing a lot of drone work, but then we pivoted quickly into eVTOLs. And so I want to say for over 2.5 years now, we've been focused only on UAM eVTOL operations. We do have like some help, and we do support like some UAS, but that's not our main goal, our main business right now.
I know we're going to get into much more detail, but could you give us the very high level overview of the services or the focus that Skyway is really lasered on for AAM in particular?
Yeah, so think about how, if I don't know where you are in the country, but I'm sure you've ran into a toll road before.
Yeah.
The business model of a toll road is basically, an operations entity that does a contract with a contractor who has some sort of PPP, right, which has the ground infrastructure side. And so in this case, it's the same way. We have our internal technologies that we use to monitor and manage our assets, which in this case would be vertiports. And instead of monitoring a highway and tracking people if they go under a sensor, it's in the sky. So it's the same business model, same tactic. The only difference is like it's just in the air, and the ground assets are not a road. It's a facility that lands aircraft, right? So a lot of our internal stuff really drives around autonomy, and I think that's the little difference of this, is how do we grow that to more of no human involved in this system, like less human capital, right? Obviously lowers the costs.
Yeah.
And so our whole systems and what we design and build are meant for us to, maximize revenue for the facilities, for the OEMs, for the airlines, right? And then also brings revenue to, all the various partners and everybody that's kind of involved, including us, right? So that's kind of what we do. So our airspace above the vertiport is what we manage, and then once you leave, you're in UTM territory in a way.
Yeah.
And at that point, like your main sponsor, Airspace Link, would be perfect there, right at that point.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So your primary customers, Tom, we're going to get to you in 1 second here. Your primary customers, Cliff, are more like the vertiport owners, if you will, and maybe that kind of ecosystem. Is that correct?
Yeah,
you're helping manage.
Yeah, the developers or our investors who put in vertiports, it's technically kind of our vertiport, but more of a partnership. And but yeah, that's pretty much our main customer, and then our other main customer is the OEMs or the airline, the fleet, whoever's managing the fleet and operating the fleet is our main customer. Because they're the ones coming in to land and buy services and take
Okay.
off.
Makes sense. So you're heavily involved in that back end that really for the public, whether you're, someone that's going to be, taking one of those flights on an air taxi, like all this will be transparent to those customers and those stakeholders. So the
They really
important kind of, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like for a person flying, from city to city on an eVTOL, to them, they're interacting with United Airlines, let's say, right? So they're on a United flight. But all the things that are happening in the background are Skyway and, TruWeather and everybody, that's making it all happen, right? And then when you land at a vertiport, it's a Skyway vertiport, kind of like, it's kind of like you go to a Starbucks, you buy a coffee, it's Starbucks coffee, but the bean was made by ABC something company in Brazil, right? Like,
Gotcha. All right. No, great explanation. So everybody kind of fully understands. So Tom, TruWeather, tell us about, TruWeather, what you're doing and the inspiration for TruWeather. And then I think we have a really awesome video to roll.
Yeah, actually, before I answer that question, I just want to say, listening to Cliff's background, the visionary, the entrepreneur that he is, it explains why I left Purdue and the Air Force. Those were, bureaucracies, well-established, but maybe not as agile and flexible and quick to move as entrepreneurs and startups are. And so Cliff's background is kind of why I joined I'll say this world. And to answer your question, where did TruWeather Solutions come from? It was founded, TruWeather Solutions was founded by our CEO, Don Berchoff. And I've known Don for 39 years. So that's a lot longer than most. And as you know, Don and Cliff and others who might be listening, you already know this, that Don has a passion for weather that's probably unlike any other person you've ever met. So Don,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, but for the visitors watching us today who don't know Don, I'd like to share a little bit about it because it's all related to your question about, the inspiration for TruWeather. Don was a weather leader in the Air Force, and his experiences, like mine, he told him that weather information, if it was very timely and very reliable, can have a huge impact, on the success of pretty much anything. We both had experiences in improving the operational effectiveness of our organizations. If it was integrated properly into that decision making, we saved hundreds of thousands, Don might claim millions of dollars in fuel cost for the Air Force. We improved the efficiency of combat operations, provided advanced warnings to communities, military communities, to make sure that aircraft were secured and people found safety when severe weather was on its way. We directly affected the flight scheduling, the routes of flight, the altitudes, all of those things, moving cargo, supplies, people. And there were two parts that Don experienced, as I did, and that was you have to first create that highly accurate and timely weather information, and then you have to make sure it's used in a smart way. So then Don left the Air Force. He served a few years less than I did. I like to point that out. But then he quickly points out that he has equal or more years of government service because he went to become a senior leader in the National Weather Service as a director of science and technology, a massive responsibility overseeing the entire portfolio, really, of the U.S. government's weather system. But he realized one thing, as great as an opportunity as that was, is that the government by its nature is not as agile, and that there was maybe some untapped technologies being developed in startups or in universities that wasn't coming to market quite as quickly as it could. And so he knew that there was this opportunity out there. And of course, he wanted to be a weatherman since he was in grade school, if not younger. But he had to find the niche. He had to find something special. He had to find a place where maybe others weren't willing to go because it was too tough. And he found it. Kind of like Cliff was just mentioning. Cliff came across this the drone industry, the unmanned aerial system industry, the advanced air mobility ecosystem and industry, however you want to call it, and he found it. And he realized, wow, that is where low altitude weather conditions, which can change from neighborhood to neighborhood, would really have an impact. So he formed a vision. He wanted TruWeather to be the weather company around the world to service these industries.
I love that. And, I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's succeeded. I mean, I was with Don in Amsterdam, and he was talking to a bunch of companies there. I know he's been in Abu Dhabi and, in Asia and all over the world, kind of sending this message. And it's an important one. And, the standards bodies have stood up and listened. The ASTM 38 group did finally pass that weather standard that Don was leading the charge for. I'm so excited about that. But let's go ahead and roll this video real quick, and you'll see Don in action.
I'm Don Burchoff, CEO of TruWeather Solutions. So the big challenge with drones and air taxis is that there's no pilot on some of these aircraft. The pilot is the best weather sensor we've ever had on an aircraft. And if you talk to helicopter pilots, they'll tell you how many times they run into undetected weather. We don't see it in our current system. TruWeather is a provider of micro-weather data services to advanced air mobility and the drone industry.
One of the great things about TruWeather is that they're innovating in an area that is critical for UAM.
Skyway is a navigation PSU. You can't do navigation without knowing what the weather's going to do. Our job is to get them the best micro-weather data to identify hazards or any kind of an event that's going to impact their ability to navigate the sky safely.
TruWeather gives us high-resolution, low-altitude quality data so we can give the best navigation experience to our customers.
We're flying a weather instrumented drone. This is one of 6 sensor types that we have. This particular drone will go up and take a vertical profile of the atmosphere. It will collect data on winds, moisture, but more importantly, it can fly in clouds to detect icing. This is going to become a major problem because we over-forecast icing today in our models. So we're grounding aircraft sometimes unnecessarily. This drone is going to go up in real time and see if the icing is really there. We're going to do a hub and spoke system. You have a high quality sensor that can give you height of clouds, and around that you have cost-effective sensors that can pick up winds in neighborhoods, which are going to be really important if people are delivering packages and they're dropping them from aloft. We're going to array those sensors in a way that gives us a microclimate view so we can be predictive about how those weather effects are going to change over the next 6 hours and help become more reliable about scheduling assets and people and having customers know when and if they're going to be able to get the goods that they've ordered based on how the weather's going to behave that afternoon. My vision is TruWeather will be the UAS industry's weather provider everywhere in the world.
All right, there he was, Don the Weather, Don Burchoff, the man, the myth, the legend. What I will say about this, a couple things, everybody out there. Number one, if you want to know about Don's background, check out our Full Tilt Tech Industry Leadership Talks podcast with Don, where he talks about his life and how he actually started charting weather at the age of 7. I mean, who does that? That tells you this is kind of a gift, right? I mean, just super unique, really cool story. I love going back and listening to that. The other thing I'll say is TruWeather's website, my P3 Tech website, lots of articles about TruWeather. Also, we have a demonstration video of the some of those sensors that you saw in this video and the network of sensors that TruWeather is working with a whole bunch of different companies to blanket the globe with for this kind of this prong one of what Tom was talking about, this low altitude weather data collection. And then the second part, of course, is the analytics on the back end. But, if we have time, because, I knew our time would fly. You guys are so amazing and all the stuff you're doing. I want to get to this partnership because we saw a little bit about this in the video. Cliff, you were in it. And at Hampton Roads, and I know, working with NASA and everything that's going on there. I'm going to go to you, Cliff. Tell us a little bit about, this partnership, how it started, and what you're doing with TruWeather to help in your efforts with advanced air mobility and vertiports.
Yeah, I mean, this all started out by meeting Don, and I guess like the worst thing you could tell Don is like, why do I need weather? I have an app on my phone. It's like, and I was that guy at the time. Like, I don't understand. What are you talking about, right?
Yeah.
And lo and behold, I had no idea, right? Like, I think most people, just in general, realize that that the weather services that we have are just more like predictions and models and stuff that are based on satellite and various other technologies. And I had no idea that my like low altitude, like micro weather, which is like environmental weather at the ground, affect stuff, into like 2,000, 3,000 feet. And that's where the I want to say the computer science side from my end was a gap. I know models and predictions, and I've written software to do exactly that. And if I were, I mean, it's good if you're trying to predict something like a model to, give you trends of how cat videos are doing, right? Or
Yeah.
models of different whatever. And it's good if you need to know when to bring an umbrella. I mean, it's not going to kill you if you ruined your, suit or whatever, but it's good to know when you need an umbrella. But if you're flying goods and services that could,
yeah, or people, like you said,
or
people,
right? That's a different story. Now you're talking about liability, insurance, operations, cost, right? It starts to get very, very hairy, and it becomes a concern, right? And when Dawn had that weather drone, which you saw in that video, I thought
the
was
meteor
really
drone.
cool. A meteor drone, yeah, is what they call it, right? Um, it would when he sent it up the first time, and we saw that the weather drastically changed at like 100 feet, right? Like 75 to 100 feet. It was just like a 10-mile-an-hour wind difference, right? Which was huge, right? Because in the weather app from NOAA or for wherever you're looking at, it's saying, oh, clear day, zero, whatever wind. But it's not at like 200 feet, it's blowing like crazy. So again, those models that you buy or have available, yes, they're there. They're great as a tool, but having a microservice like this is like a game changer in really understanding what's actually happening, right? And if you can understand that, then from Skyway side, it lowers our risk, and not only our risk, but it also makes sure that when we send out, customers or clients, or give them authority to land or whatever the conditions are, that we know exactly what it is, right? And it's not some sort of like general prediction value. I recently, I was on the Clubhouse last time, and I mentioned this because this actually happened a few weeks ago. So I was going to Catalina, and I was taking the helicopter ride. If anybody's never done it, I highly recommend it. It's beautiful. But in this instance, on this morning, a fog had rolled in, right? And mind you, in Long Beach, you can see the container ships, like distance is pretty far visually where you can see stuff. And I anticipated that was like, oh, that must be like at least 800 feet, away, right? Like, but as a corporation from the helicopter charter, they have very strict rules, right, on how they operate. And because they didn't have weather tools, they don't know, like they can't on paper say this number ceiling height is whatever, and we're going to operate. No, they're just going to wait, right, until they could see some sort of marker, and then send out a helicopter 2 hours later to go see if that was right, and then come back and then make you fly. I waited 4 hours for the flight. I could have gone on a boat, right? So it totally, had they had a weather like sensor from TruWeather, just as an example,
Yeah.
they would have known like 3 hours earlier it was okay to fly. Like they would have known that, right? And they would have not had to have 4 cancellations, right? Or people not flying. That was loss of revenue for them, right? And so that opened my eyes big time. Like, no, this is a clear example of one scenario that affects your business, right? And so that's kind of reason why we've been working a lot in various like projects, understanding like certain climates and where we're putting our vertiports are at, We've done work in Florida, here in Northern California, and in various parts throughout the country, including international projects. So that's
Yeah, hugely important. I saw, Tom, you had your hand raised. I want to also make sure, Tom, we talk about V360 and your current radar displays and also your mission cast. So over to you, Tom, and just tell us when we should be popping up some of these images for the audience.
Sure. Yeah, Cliff, that's why you're such a great partner. You just made the case for us. I'd like to just foot stomp a few things that Cliff mentioned. So TruWeather is working to solve the problem that we believe will prevent the UAS and the advanced air mobility industries from scaling up to profitability. Cliff mentioned profit a little bit. There's a business side, right? We believe that in order for those operations to be financially viable, they're going to need to fly and fly and fly again. No missed opportunities, no waste, no unnecessary delays, no inefficiencies. And now we know that we can't change the weather. Sometimes it's going to be, so bad that there's nothing that can be done.
Sure.
Flights will be canceled. Goods won't be always delivered. People will have to take ground transportation to stay on schedule. But the key is to be certain about when those conditions will and won't occur.
Yeah.
And give operators that chance to make the decisions on time based on high certainty weather information. And so
Yes.
you asked about, and Cliff mentioned the Meteor drone and some of these other sensors that we have. We're building this from the ground up, not from the space, 36,000 kilometers away, but right here on the ground, taking these micro weather measurements, fusing them into a platform that we call V360, and then making a variety of those products available to our clients, whether it's the radar that you mentioned a moment ago, whether it's traditional weather observations from airports, or more often than not, as we emerge with the new ASTM weather standard, we will be allowed to use these more novel weather sensors that we can place in literally in neighborhoods or in areas that are not well instrumented.
Yeah. So tell us about this radar picture and how this is kind of this data fusion, if you will, from other sensors and even traditional, right, governmental data sources. You're fusing them all, aren't you, Tom?
Yes, we are. So on the radar, we're fusing in the U.S. government provided radar as well as some commercial radar known as My Radar to give a complete radar picture, not only where the rain is falling right now, but the My Radar part of our product actually is a prediction in the next 2 hours, which is kind of the time frame that really matters to these communities that we're talking about. Shows where that precipitation is likely to move based on the steering weather and wind patterns. Superimposed on this particular product are the locations of the ground sensors. And as I mentioned, these are not just your standard multi-million-dollar weather systems that are at the airports, but rather other more novel, less expensive sensors that are placed throughout communities, flying corridors, well removed from airports, that if we don't sense those areas, if we don't collect the actual information, there's really no way we're going to be able to not only tell you what it is right now with certainty, but to be able to predict it in the time frames.
Yeah. So everybody, once again, we did like a worldwide premiere of, this weather sensor network with Don. It's on my website under product releases, as well as I assume on the TruWeather website as well, and their YouTube channel. So check that out if you want to see, at least a very good range of different kinds of sensors, including Meteomatics, Meteor drone that we've been talking about, this incredible flying weather lab that no one else is making. I mean, super cool. So tell us about Mission Cast. Is that the visual, basically analytics part that as a decision maker I look at to make some decisions?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's the flagship, unique proprietary product that we have. It's a product that for I think it's the first 24 hours, where you give you an hour by hour prediction of several weather parameters that really matter to drones and the AAM community. And the depiction you're showing there shows the color that is completely configurable by the client themselves, by each operator, by the UTM, whoever it might be who's making decisions. It's configurable based on the operational thresholds that matter to you. If winds more than 20 knots at 200 feet above the ground matter to you, then you make that red anytime that that's being predicted. Now, this is not just a standard single model. When you hear television weather people talk about the models say this and the models say that, what makes MissionCast unique is that we're picking the best parts of various models from the different scientific communities that have been shown to be the best cloud predictors, the best visibility predictors, the best wind predictors, so on and so forth.
So important, and obviously Cliff saw the value of this. So Cliff, tell us about your vertiport solutions, UTM, and how this is all working with weather.
Yeah, we dropped our UTM product like 2 years ago, but we have we do our own internal like ATM and vertiport systems. So what we do is we put a weather sensor out on the vertiport itself, and then from there we put that information goes into our system, and we have what's called a navigation pod. It's literally a pod that our employees sit in, and they monitor all the data that's coming in from various systems, including TruWeather. Then one of the filters at the top of the screens is our weather layer, if you will. And from there, we're looking at what Dawn's weather systems is putting in. But we kind of go a step further. We take that data and throw it into a monitoring system, which has our like ML engine. And from there, it will monitor various points in advisories in the area, and then has different protocols that start to give off various alerts for us to like take action, right? So it's a very important part of the data feed that goes into our nav pods for our navigators to make decisions on, you know, do we hold these aircraft for another 5 minutes, or do we let them go, right? And that's pretty much a lot of the main decisions that are happening. Or if there's a pop-up, you know, whatever that's happening in the region, you know, do we move people around it, right? And give an advisory for that. And we only give information to our customers, right? You know, if you have to subscribe to the feeds, and then you have to have an account with us. But it's all of our stuff is API based. So we're, you know, collecting all the information from TruWeather via API, and then all of our customers are all connected via API. All of our front end like design and interface is internal tools. So we don't really sell anything that you can have, I guess. We're more of a service, and so that's kind of that's why it's super important for us as a company.
Gotcha. So you're are you targeting primarily kind of those commercial you know, eVTOL groups for your vertiports, or is there like a public safety angle of this, or a governmental aspect to what you're doing as well, Cliff?
Yeah, there is. So we do have various connections to the local government level, fire departments, police departments. We have great relationships all through there. We've created the communication standard for submitting, you know, information from the ground to us, so that way we can communicate all of that. We're kind of like this all-in-one holistic communication to operations center. So, you know, whatever the concerns are on the ground or in the air or nearby, you know, we have various partners in radar and all kinds of other detection, right, for uncooperative traffic, things like that, right? So it's all about understanding what's in the airspace, and obviously weather's like one of those big things, right? You know, for us.
Well, absolutely. You know, when you think about it, I know there's been a lot of talk when you talk about kind of the highways in the sky, Cliff, and what that's going to look like. And, you know, when when you're on the road and driving, there's an emergency right of way, right? Like if an ambulance is coming through, maybe it could be a drone carrying an organ, or,
Yeah.
you know, or an EpiPen that needs to get somewhere. So, hey, everybody clear this area. I can see why then there's this plugin for you. And Tom, for you guys, clearly, you know, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're public safety or otherwise, weather is going to matter if you're trying to get operations going in the air. And I remember at the drone responders event back in March, Don was on the stage with Matrix Space as an example, one of the smaller radar companies. In fact, Lori D. Mateis from that company was just on the show last week talking about their little Matrix Space radar, which is an incredible product. You know, so you guys are involved in drone as first responder then as well.
Yes, we very much are. And that community, as you know, is growing and growing in terms of how much and in how many ways they're using, you know, drones as a response for either law enforcement, emergency services, and so forth. And one of the questions that I typically like to ask people to demonstrate this very point about how important weather is to the DFR community is traditionally, if somebody calls the fire department or 911 because you know, a house in the neighborhood is burning, if you ask them, well, which fire department will be on site, they'll say, well, the closest one, the one that's only a half mile away, or the one that's 3 miles away. Well, we have a client in North Carolina who's delivering AEDs for people with, you know, a heart attack that needs an AED.
Very significant.
In a remote, and, you know, for every, I think they've explained that for every 1 minute that's delayed in getting that AED delivered, there's a 10% less chance of survival.
Yeah,
well, so if a community has 3 locations from which they deploy drones to deliver these very AEDs, like 3 fire stations, which one is sent out 4 miles to deliver that AED? Is it the one that's closest, 3 miles away? Better not be, because they might have a 25 knot headwind. And if they have the headwind, that thing is not going to be delivered as quickly as the one who is 6 miles away, but has a 25 knot tailwind. So this is why we must sense the low altitude in very micro scales, if you will, and then have that integrated into the decision making. And DFR is a perfect example of that.
I think it is. And, you know, when we think about advanced air mobility, it is that range of small drones delivering important packages all the way up to air taxis that will eventually carry people and hopefully autonomously someday, right, Cliff? So, all right, I knew our time would fly. We have like 2 minutes left. So here's what I want to do. I want to cede the floor to each of you to take a minute and whatever you wanted to say in conclusion, whatever we kind of missed, and button up the partnership, and then we'll sign off. So I'll go with Tom first, and we'll end with Cliff as our special guest as a TruWeather partner. So Tom, over to you next.
Well, first I want to say when I joined a year ago, one of the first meetings I had with Don was to talk about our partners. And I'm not exaggerating, the number one name on that list of partnerships was Skyway and Cliff. And soon after I started, I was in a meeting and obviously learning at the time, but I would just say the partnership has been great, very supportive, hopefully mutually. And we look forward to many more years ahead in partnership with Skyway. My final comment, and it's not related to the partnership, it's and I don't mean to be trying to sell TruWeather. We only want 1 minute. Here's my tagline. If you're paying nothing for your weather information, you're getting exactly what you paid for.
There you go. So true. So true. Cliff, that's a hard one to beat. Over to you.
Yeah, I know. Love Don and on the entire TruWeather team. They've been awesome. We're a very lively company ourselves, so our cultures fit perfectly with one another, let's just say. So we really enjoy working with them, but the tech is great. The value is great. And if you're thinking that the weather that you got is good enough, I'd think again, right? And that's the takeaway.
Yeah, and obviously reach these gentlemen through their websites, as well as LinkedIn. I think is probably a great place to connect with both of you to learn more about Skyway and TruWeather Solutions. So once again, our time has flown. Thank you both so much for taking this time today. I always learn something new. Cliff, your Skyway model has evolved. I know your logo has evolved. Actually TruWeather's logo changed too. So, as time goes on and you guys see what's happening in the industry and what the needs are, you guys are growing with it. And I love that you're doing it together. So appreciate you both and everything that you're both doing for the industry, for advanced air mobility and uncrewed aircraft systems as well. Really appreciate you. We are out here, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.